The year was 2387, and the galaxy had been quiet for 50 years. Humans had left their homeworlds and entered deep sleep aboard giant colony ships that drifted through space like sleeping giants. The Galactic Council was happy to see them go. Humans were too violent, too unpredictable for the peaceful order that 12 alien species had built together. But peace did not last. Admiral Zeftar stood before the emergency council meeting, his crystal body glowing with stress patterns that all could see. The Crystalline Federation had lost 3 more worlds in the past month. The attacks came without warning, struck without mercy, and left behind only death and strange messages that no one could understand. They call themselves the Void Hunters, Zeftar said, his voice echoing in the great chamber. We have no idea where they come from or what they want. Their ships appear from nowhere, pass through our defenses like they are not there, and vanish before we can fight back. The other council members shifted uneasily. The Reptilian Dominion had lost 2 mining colonies. The gas dwellers had seen an entire research station simply disappear. Even the mighty Hive Collective, with their billions of connected minds, could not predict where the hunters would strike next. What do they want? Asked Krathmore, the security chief of the Reptilian Dominion. His scaled hands gripped the table as he spoke. Every attack is different. Sometimes they kill everyone. Sometimes they leave survivors who speak of nightmares, and these messages they leave behind. No one can read them. On a research station far from the council meeting, Dr. Elena Rodriguez sat alone in her laboratory. She was one of the few humans who had chosen to stay awake when her species entered their long sleep. Elena studied alien plants and animals, trying to understand how life worked on different worlds. But now she was studying something else. The messages kept coming. Strange signals that reached her station after every Void Hunter attack. They were encrypted, hidden in ways that most aliens would never think to look. But Elena was human, and humans were good at finding patterns in chaos. She stared at the latest message on her screen. Mixed in with random noise, she found fragments of poetry, old Earth poetry from hundreds of years ago. The words spoke of darkness and endless night, of sleeping children and forgotten promises. Along with the words came numbers, mathematical sequences that Elena recognized from human history books. Elena's hands shook as she decoded more of the message. The numbers were coordinates, star charts that showed the location of human colony ships still drifting in their long sleep. Someone was tracking humanity's sleeping fleet, watching them, waiting. A cold fear settled in Elena's stomach. The Void Hunters were not aliens at all. Back at the council meeting, reports continued to pour in. The Hunters had attacked a medical station, killing hundreds of doctors and nurses. They left behind a recording of human children laughing, but the laughter was wrong somehow, twisted and broken. Another attack destroyed a school, and the only survivor spoke of figures in dark armor who moved like smoke and spoke in voices that hurt to hear. They know us too well, said Veltara of the Gas Dwellers, her words floating through the translation device. They know exactly where to strike to cause the most fear. They understand our psychology, our weaknesses. How is this possible? Admiral Zeftar brought up a holographic display showing the pattern of attacks. Red dots marked where the Void Hunters had struck, spreading across council space like a disease. There is no military logic to these attacks. They avoid our strong points and strike at civilian targets. It is as if they want to terrorize us rather than defeat us. Elena continued working through the night, her research station's computers humming as they processed data. She had found references to something called Project Nightfall in the old human military records. The files were mostly deleted, classified beyond her access level, but fragments remained. Volunteers who underwent modifications to survive in space, experiments with human enhancement, programs that were supposedly canceled before the Great Sleep began. But what if they were not canceled? What if some humans never went to sleep at all? The next morning brought news of another attack. The Void Hunters had struck the Galactic Council's primary military academy. Thousands of young cadets from 12 different species died in their sleep as dark figures moved through the halls like ghosts. But this time the message they left behind was different. This time it was written in perfect galactic standard where everyone could read it. You took our children's future. Now we take yours. Elena read the report with growing horror. The writing was human. The anger was human. The calculated cruelty was something only humans could conceive. She thought about the colony ships floating in the dark. Millions of people sleeping peacefully while trusting that they would wake up in a better universe. But what if the universe had become something else? What if some humans had been awake all this time? Watching the galaxy change, growing angry at what they saw, she opened her communication system and began composing a message to the nearest colony ship. Her brother Jake was the captain of the UCS Liberty, sleeping with 50,000 other colonists. Elena had to warn them. The Void Hunters were not alien invaders. They were human beings who had been changed by 50 years of survival in the dark void of space. They had become something else, something that viewed the sleeping colonies as abandoned children who needed to be awakened to the harsh realities of an unfriendly galaxy. Elena's fingers hesitated over the emergency awakening codes. Waking people early from cryosleep was dangerous. Many would die from the shock. But if she was right about the Void Hunters, then humanity needed to wake up soon. The galaxy's monsters were not alien creatures from the dark between stars. They were human beings who had been waiting in that darkness for 50 years, planning their revenge against the aliens who had driven their species away. And now they were coming to collect the rest of their people, whether those people wanted to be collected or not. Elena began typing the awakening signal. Outside her station, the stars watched silently as humanity prepared to confront its own reflection in the void. 6 months had passed since the first Void Hunter attack, and the Galactic Council was falling apart. Entire star systems sat empty, their populations fled to safer regions of space. The mysterious attackers seemed to enjoy causing fear more than winning battles. They sent strange broadcasts across all communication channels. The sounds of crying children, ghostly laughter that made listeners feel sick, and sometimes complete silence that somehow felt more frightening than any threat. Security Chief Krathmore of the Reptilian Dominion stood before the emergency assembly with news that made everyone's blood run cold. His scales were dark with stress patterns as he spoke. The Void Hunters know everything about us. They know our military codes, our ship designs, our defense plans. Either we have a massive spy network working against us, or these attackers have been watching us for decades. The council chamber erupted in angry voices. Representatives from 12 different species began pointing fingers at each other. The Crystalline Federation accused the Hive Collective of sharing information through their mental networks. The Gas Dweller suggested that the Reptilian Dominion's warrior culture made them natural allies of violent attackers. Trust was breaking down as fear took control. Silence. Admiral Zeftar's voice cut through the noise. His crystal body flashed with authority patterns. Fighting among ourselves is exactly what these Void Hunters want. We must work together or we will all fall separately. But working together was becoming impossible. 3 more council worlds had gone dark in the past week. The attackers moved like they could see the future, always striking where defenses were weakest, always knowing exactly how to cause the most psychological damage. Dr. Elena Rodriguez sat in her research station, surrounded by screens full of data. She had been working without sleep for days, trying to decode more of the mysterious transmissions that followed each attack. The mathematical sequences were becoming clearer now. They were not just coordinates of human colony ships. They were detailed tracking data showing exactly where each ship was located, how many people were aboard, and when they were scheduled to wake up. Someone had been watching humanity's sleeping fleet for 50 years. Elena pulled up the historical records again, searching for any trace of Project Nightfall. The files were heavily encrypted, but her human brain found patterns that alien computers had missed. She discovered purchase orders for cybernetic implants, medical records of volunteers who underwent genetic modification, and training schedules for something called Deep Void Survival Operations. The project was supposed to create soldiers who could survive in space for extended periods without support. They would be scouts and intelligence gatherers sent ahead of the main human fleet to study alien civilizations and find safe places for colonies. But according to the official records, Project Nightfall was canceled when humanity decided to enter cryosleep instead of continuing to explore. Elena found evidence that suggested otherwise. Transport manifests showed that several ships carrying modified volunteers had left Earth's orbit during the evacuation. These ships were not part of the main colony fleet. They had simply disappeared into the dark void of space, carrying their enhanced human cargo to unknown destinations. Elena's hands shook as she realized what this meant. Project Nightfall had not been canceled. It had been given a new mission. While the rest of humanity slept, these enhanced volunteers would watch over them, gathering intelligence about alien civilizations and preparing for the day when humans would wake up. But something had gone wrong. 50 years of isolation and survival in the void had changed these volunteers into something else. They had become the Void Hunters. The communication system in Elena's station suddenly activated. A new transmission was coming in, but this one was different. It was not hidden in static or encrypted in complex codes. It was a direct message sent on human military frequencies that had not been used for half a century. "Dr. Elena Rodriguez," the voice said. It was human, but wrong somehow. Too calm, too emotionless. "We know you are listening. We know you have been trying to understand us. You are the sister of Captain Jake Rodriguez, commander of the colony ship Liberty. We remember Jake. He was a good soldier before he chose to sleep instead of fight." Elena's blood turned to ice. The Void Hunters knew who she was. They knew about her brother. They had been watching her. "We are not your enemies, Elena," the voice continued. "We are what humanity became when faced with the truth about this galaxy. The aliens fear us because we are strong. They drove us away because they knew we would eventually surpass them. But we never left. We have been here all along, growing stronger, learning their weaknesses, preparing for the day when we would reclaim what is ours." The transmission showed images of the Void Hunters' attacks, but now Elena could see them from a different perspective. The attackers moved with military precision. They used tactics that only human soldiers would know. Their weapons were advanced, versions of human technology, evolved and improved over 50 years of constant warfare. "Your people sleep while aliens rule the galaxy," the voice said. "They dream of peace while we fight for survival. But soon they will wake up, and we will show them what they must become to thrive in this hostile universe. The Galactic Council will fall, and humanity will take its rightful place as the dominant species." Elena realized with growing horror that the Void Hunters saw themselves as protectors of humanity. In their minds, they were fighting a war that the sleeping colonists did not even know was happening. They believed that the aliens had tricked humanity into giving up their aggressive nature, making them weak and vulnerable. The transmission ended with coordinates for a meeting location. "Come to us, Elena," the voice said. "See what we have built. See what humanity can become when it stops pretending to be peaceful. Your brother will wake up soon, and he will need to understand the truth. Help us prepare him for what is coming." Elena stared at the coordinates on her screen. The Void Hunters wanted to show her something. They wanted her to understand their point of view before humanity woke up and discovered what the galaxy had become. She began composing an emergency message to the UCS Liberty. Her brother Jake needed to wake up now before the Void Hunters decided to collect the sleeping colonists by force. Elena had a terrible feeling that the enhanced humans were not planning to ask permission when they came to reunite with their sleeping brothers and sisters. Outside her station, another world went dark as the Void Hunters continued their campaign of terror against the Galactic Council. They were not just attacking random targets anymore. They were systematically destroying the alien civilization that had driven humanity away, preparing the galaxy for a new age of human dominance. But the humans they wanted to awaken might not recognize the creatures their protectors had become. Elena Rodriguez stared at the emergency awakening codes on her computer screen. Her hands trembled as she typed in the authorization sequence for the UCS Liberty. Waking people early from cryosleep was dangerous. The human body was not meant to be forced awake after decades of frozen suspension. Many colonists would not survive the shock. But Elena knew that keeping them asleep was even more dangerous now. The Void Hunters were coming for them. She entered her security clearance and sent the awakening signal across the void to her brother's ship. The message would take hours to reach the Liberty, and then the awakening process would take even longer. Elena could only hope that Jake and his crew would wake up in time to understand the threat they faced. Aboard the UCS Liberty, automated systems began their work. Warning lights flashed red throughout the massive colony ship as computers started the complex process of bringing 50,000 people back from the edge of death. The first to wake would be the command crew, followed by essential personnel, and finally the civilian population. Captain Jake Rodriguez felt consciousness return like a slow tide. His body ached in ways he had never experienced before. Cryo sleep was supposed to be peaceful, like a long, dreamless night, but something was wrong. The awakening protocols were not following their normal schedule. Emergency lights painted the medical bay in harsh red shadows. "Captain?" Dr. Amy Foster's voice was weak but alert. She was in the next cryopod, already sitting up despite the obvious pain the early awakening had caused. "What's happening? Why are we awake?" Jake tried to speak, but his throat felt like sandpaper. A medical robot moved to his side and began checking his vital signs while injecting him with stimulants designed to help his body recover from the forced awakening. Around the medical bay, other senior officers were beginning to stir in their pods. "Emergency message incoming," announced the ship's computer in its calm, artificial voice. "Priority transmission from Dr. Elena Rodriguez, authorization code verified." Jake's sister appeared on the main screen, but she looked terrible. Her hair was unkempt, her eyes red from lack of sleep, and her face showed the kind of fear that Jake had only seen during wartime. Elena began speaking quickly as if she was afraid someone might cut off her transmission at any moment. "Jake, you need to listen carefully. The galaxy has changed while we've been asleep. There are attackers calling themselves Void Hunters who have been terrorizing the alien civilizations. But they're not aliens, Jake, they're human. They're the volunteers from Project Nightfall who were supposed to be canceled before we left Earth." Jake felt his blood turn cold. He remembered Project Nightfall. It had been a classified military program designed to create enhanced soldiers who could survive in deep space for extended periods. The volunteers underwent genetic modification and cybernetic enhancement to become the ultimate scouts and intelligence gatherers. The project was supposed to help humanity explore the galaxy safely. "They've been awake for 50 years, Elena continued. 50 years of survival in the void, watching alien civilizations growing stronger and more dangerous. They think the Galactic Council drove humanity away because they feared us. They believe we were tricked into giving up our aggressive nature and becoming weak." Dr. Amy Foster had moved to Jake's side, listening to the transmission with growing horror. As the ship's chief medical officer, she had access to classified files about human enhancement projects. "If they've been enhanced for deep space survival and they've been active for 50 years, she whispered, "they might not be entirely human anymore." Lieutenant Commander Chris Morgan, the ship's security chief, was fully awake now and checking his weapons. His military training had kicked in automatically when he heard the word threat. "What do they want?" he asked. Elena's transmission answered his question. "They want to collect all the sleeping humans and force us to become like them. They think it's the only way humanity can survive in a hostile galaxy. They've been tracking every colony ship, waiting for the right moment to wake us up and recruit us into their war against the aliens." Jake stood up slowly, his body still weak from the forced awakening. Around him, more officers were coming online as the medical robots worked to restore their systems. The bridge crew would be awake within hours, and the civilian population would follow over the next few days. "Sir," Chris Morgan said, checking his security monitors, "we're detecting movement in nearby space. 3 unidentified ships approaching our position." Jake moved to the command console and activated the ship's external sensors. The 3 approaching vessels were unlike anything in the human or alien databases. They seemed to be built from a mixture of human technology and something else, something organic that pulsed with its own light. The ships moved with fluid grace, as if they were alive rather than constructed. "Incoming transmission," the computer announced. The main screen flickered and showed a figure that made everyone in the medical bay step back in shock. It had once been human, but extensive modifications had changed it into something else. Cybernetic implants covered half of its face. Organic growths emerged from its neck and arms, and its eyes glowed with an unnatural light. "Captain Jake Rodriguez," the figure said in a voice that sounded like it came from multiple throats at once. "I am Commander Lisa Park of the Void Hunter Collective. We served together during the war against the Centauri rebels. Do you remember me?" Jake did remember. Lisa Park had been his friend, his colleague, and for a brief time something more. She had been one of the most dedicated officers in the human fleet, someone who would do anything to protect their species. But the creature on the screen bore little resemblance to the woman he had known. "Lisa," Jake said quietly, "what have you become?" "I have become what humanity needs to survive," Lisa replied. "We all have. The galaxy is not a peaceful place, Jake. While you slept, we fought. We learned. We evolved. The aliens fear us because they know we are superior, but they cannot destroy us because we have become something beyond their understanding. Amy Foster was scanning the biosignatures from the approaching ships. "Jake," she whispered, "there are dozens of enhanced humans on those vessels. Their life signs are unusual. They seem to be connected somehow, sharing biological functions." Lisa continued speaking. "We offer you a choice, old friend. Join us willingly and we will help your people become strong. Refuse and we will take them anyway. The sleeping humans will wake up either as partners in our collective or as prisoners being prepared for enhancement. The galaxy has no place for weak individual humans who dream of peace." Jake realized that the Void Hunters were not planning to negotiate. They saw the sleeping colonists as lost children who needed to be saved from their own weakness. In their minds, forcing humanity to undergo enhancement was an act of mercy, not conquest. "We need time to consider your offer," Jake said, trying to buy time for more of his crew to wake up. Lisa smiled, and the expression was terrifying on her modified face. "You have until your full crew is awake. Then we will begin the collection process. Your people will thank us when they understand what we have become." The transmission ended, leaving Jake and his officers staring at a blank screen. Outside their ship, 3 vessels full of enhanced humans waited patiently for an answer that would determine the fate of 50,000 sleeping colonists. Jake looked at Amy and Chris, seeing his own fear reflected in their faces. Humanity had spent 50 years sleeping peacefully while their protectors turned into monsters. Now those monsters had come home to collect their family. Captain Jake Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UCS Liberty, watching the 3 Void Hunter ships maintain their position just outside weapons range. His crew was fully awake now, but many were still recovering from the forced revival. Dr. Amy Foster had reported that they had lost nearly 300 colonists during the emergency awakening process. The knowledge that his decision to wake everyone early had killed his own people weighed heavily on Jake's mind. "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Chris Morgan said from the security station, "the Galactic Council is demanding that we help them fight the Void Hunters. They're threatening to destroy all human colony ships if we refuse to cooperate." Jake read the Council's message on his command screen. The alien governments were desperate. The Void Hunters had destroyed dozens of worlds and killed millions of beings. The Council believed that only humans could understand and defeat these enhanced attackers. But Jake knew the truth was more complicated. "They want us to fight our own people," he said quietly. Amy Foster looked up from her medical console. "Jake, I've been analyzing the bioscans from the Void Hunter ships. These enhanced humans are not just modified, they're connected. Their brain patterns show signs of shared consciousness. They might be operating as a collective intelligence rather than individual people." Chris Morgan pulled up tactical displays, showing the Void Hunter fleet movements across the galaxy. If they're sharing information instantly, conventional military tactics won't work against them. They'll know our plans before we make them. Jake made a decision that he knew might doom them all. "Chris, I want you to take a small reconnaissance team to investigate one of their recent attack sites. We need to understand what they're really doing out there." 2 hours later, Chris Morgan and his team departed in a stealth shuttle, heading for a research station that the Void Hunters had attacked the previous week. The station had been studying alien plant life, hardly a military target, but the Void Hunters had killed everyone aboard and left their usual cryptic message. What Chris found at the research station defied all logic. The facility had been completely transformed. Where there had once been laboratories and living quarters, now there were organic growths that pulsed with bioluminescent light. Strange machinery that seemed part technology and part living tissue covered every surface. "It's like they're terraforming the station," reported Sergeant Kyle Davis, Chris's second in command. "But not for habitation. This looks like some kind of factory." Chris collected samples of the organic material and transmitted the data back to the Liberty. Amy Foster's analysis revealed something that made everyone's skin crawl. The Void Hunters were growing biological technology that could interface directly with human nervous systems. They were literally building machines that could merge with human consciousness. "They're not just enhanced humans," Amy reported to Jake. "They're cyborgs in the truest sense. Part human, part machine, part something else entirely. And whatever they're building at these attack sites, it's designed to process large numbers of people." Elena Rodriguez, monitoring from her research station, intercepted more Void Hunter communications. The enhanced humans were preparing for something. they called the collection. They had identified the locations of every human colony ship and were planning simultaneous attacks to capture all sleeping colonists. But worse than that, Helena discovered that the Void Hunters didn't see what they were doing as conquest. They genuinely believed they were saving humanity from weakness and isolation. In their collective consciousness, individual identity was a flaw that prevented humans from achieving their true potential. Jake received another transmission from Commander Lisa Park. This time, she appeared even more changed than before. Her human features were almost completely hidden beneath cybernetic implants and organic growths. When she spoke, her voice came from multiple sources, as if several people were talking at once. "Jake, you've seen what we're building," Lisa said. "You understand now that we're not destroyers. We're creators. We're preparing humanity for its next stage of evolution." "Evolution?" Jake replied. "You've turned yourselves into machines. We've become something greater than human," Lisa corrected. "We no longer experience fear, hatred, or loneliness. We share knowledge and consciousness across vast distances. We are truly united for the first time in human history." Amy Foster was monitoring the transmission and noticed something disturbing. Lisa's brain patterns showed no individual thought processes. Everything she said seemed to come from a larger collective intelligence that used her as a speaking device. "What about choice?" Jake asked. "What about the right to remain individual?" Lisa's expression didn't change, but the collective intelligence behind her eyes seemed to consider the question. "Choice is what led humanity to scatter across the galaxy in fear. Choice is what made your species weak and divided. We offer unity, strength, and purpose. Your colonists will understand once they are integrated into our consciousness." The transmission ended and Jake realized that negotiation was impossible. The Void Hunters weren't planning to give humanity a choice. They saw individual consciousness as a disease that needed to be cured. Chris Morgan returned from his reconnaissance mission with disturbing news. "Sir, we detected Void Hunter ships moving toward 3 other colony vessels. They're not waiting for our answer. They're beginning the collection process." Jake faced an impossible decision: fight against enhanced humans who might still retain some trace of their original humanity, or allow them to forcibly convert 50,000 sleeping colonists into their collective consciousness. Dr. Amy Foster approached him with a desperate idea. "Jake, I think I might be able to develop a virus that could disrupt their collective network. But it would require someone to get close to their command ship and upload it directly into their systems." "A suicide mission," Jake said. "Maybe. But if we can break their collective consciousness, they might return to being individual humans. Some of them might even remember who they used to be." Elena Rodriguez contacted them from her research station with an even more desperate plan. "I'm going to do it," she said. "I'm going to infiltrate their command ship and upload the virus. Lisa Park knows me. She might let me get close enough." Jake wanted to refuse, but he knew they were running out of time. Other colony ships were already under attack. Millions of sleeping humans were about to be forced into a collective consciousness that would erase everything that made them individual people. "Elena, if you do this, you might not come back as yourself," Jake warned. "If I don't do this, none of us will remain ourselves," Elena replied. As Elena prepared for her infiltration mission, the Void Hunters continued their attacks across the galaxy. The Galactic Council's forces were no match for enemies who shared information instantly and felt no fear of death. But Jake and his crew were preparing a different kind of weapon, one that might save humanity by destroying the very thing that the Void Hunters believed made them superior. The battle for human consciousness was about to begin. Dr. Elena Rodriguez put on the experimental suit that Dr. Amy Foster had designed for her infiltration mission. The suit was covered with biomimetic patches that would hopefully fool the Void Hunter sensors into thinking she was one of them, at least long enough to reach their command ship. In her pocket, she carried a data device containing the quantum virus that might break the collective consciousness, holding the enhanced humans together. "Remember," Amy said as she made final adjustments to the suit, "the virus will take several minutes to spread through their network. You need to stay alive long enough for it to work." Jake Rodriguez watched his sister prepare for what might be her final mission. The Void Hunter fleet had grown larger over the past few hours. Dozens of ships now surrounded human colony vessels throughout the galaxy. The collection process had begun, and reports were coming in of sleeping colonists being taken from their ships by enhanced humans who moved like shadows. "Elena, you don't have to do this," Jake said. "We can find another way." "There is no other way," Elena replied. "Lisa Park and her collective have spent 50 years becoming something that no longer understands human choice. Someone has to remind them what they used to be." Elena climbed into her small shuttle and launched toward the Void Hunter command ship. The vessel was enormous, larger than any human ship ever built. Its hull seemed to be alive, pulsing with organic lights that moved in patterns too complex for individual minds to follow. As Elena approached, she felt a strange pressure in her head, as if something was trying to push its way into her thoughts. "Dr. Elena Rodriguez," a voice said directly into her mind without using any communication device. "We have been waiting for you. Commander Lisa Park wishes to speak with you before you join us." Elena's shuttle was guided into a docking bay that looked more like the inside of a living creature than a spacecraft. Walls of organic material flexed and moved around her as she walked deeper into the ship. The air itself seemed alive, carrying whispers of thoughts and emotions that belonged to the collective consciousness. She found Lisa Park in what might have once been a command center. But now it was something else entirely. Lisa was connected to the ship itself through cables and tubes that seemed to grow from her body. Her human features were barely visible beneath layers of cybernetic implants and biological modifications. "Elena," Lisa said, though her voice seemed to come from the walls themselves rather than her mouth. "You came to stop us, but you cannot stop evolution. You cannot stop humanity from becoming what it needs to become." "I came to remind you what you used to be," Elena replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "You were human once. You made choices. You had individual thoughts and feelings." Lisa's expression didn't change, but the collective consciousness behind her seemed to consider Elena's words. "Individual thoughts are chaos. Individual feelings are weakness. We have moved beyond such limitations. We no longer experience pain, loneliness, or fear. We are perfect." Elena activated the virus device in her pocket, but she didn't upload it immediately. Instead, she tried to reach whatever remained of Lisa Park's individual consciousness. "Do you remember when we were children on Earth? Do you remember dreaming about exploring the stars? You wanted to see new worlds, meet new people, discover new things. That curiosity, that wonder. It came from being individual, from being human." For a moment, something flickered behind Lisa's glowing eyes. A trace of the woman she had once been seemed to surface through the collective consciousness. "I remember," she said quietly. "But those dreams led to war. They led to conflict with alien species who feared us. Individual desires caused suffering. Individual desires also caused love, creativity, and growth," Elena countered. "You gave up everything that made you human to avoid pain. But pain is part of what makes life meaningful." Elena uploaded the virus into the ship's systems. Immediately, alarms began sounding throughout the vessel. The collective consciousness recoiled as the virus spread through their network like wildfire. But instead of simply destroying their connection, Elena had modified the virus to restore individual consciousness while preserving the beneficial aspects of their enhancement. The process was agonizing for the Void Hunters. Across the galaxy, enhanced humans began screaming, as individual identity returned to minds that had been collective for decades. Many could not survive the transition, their enhanced bodies shutting down as their nervous systems tried to re-establish individual thought patterns. But those who survived began to remember who they had been before they joined the collective. Lisa Park collapsed as her connection to the ship was severed. Her cybernetic implants sparked and failed as her human nervous system reasserted control over her enhanced body. "Elena," Lisa gasped, her voice fully human for the first time in 50 years. "What have we done? What did we become?" Elena knelt beside her former friend, feeling the virus changing her own consciousness as well. The device had been designed to affect any human nervous system it encountered. Elena found herself able to sense the thoughts and emotions of the other humans on the ship, but without losing her own identity. "You became afraid," Elena said gently. "You were alone in the dark for so long that you forgot what it meant to be human. But it's not too late to remember." Across the galaxy, the effects of the virus spread through the Void Hunter network. Ships stopped their attacks on colony vessels as their crews struggled with the return of individual consciousness. Many enhanced humans died during the transition, but others began to remember their original mission, to protect humanity, not to forcibly change it. Jake Rodriguez received communications from Void Hunter ships throughout the galaxy. The voices that came through were human again, filled with confusion and regret. "Captain Rodriguez," one former collective member said, "we remember now. We're sorry. We thought we were saving humanity, but we were destroying what made us human in the first place." The Galactic Council watched in amazement as the Void Hunter fleet suddenly stopped its attacks and began helping to repair the damage it had caused. The enhanced humans, now calling themselves the Restoration Corps, used their advanced technology to rebuild destroyed worlds and heal the wounds their collective had inflicted. Elena Rodriguez became the first human ambassador to the Galactic Council. Her unique consciousness, changed by the virus to bridge individual and collective awareness, allowed her to communicate with both humans and aliens in ways that had never been possible before. She could coordinate with others without losing herself, proving that cooperation didn't require the surrender of individual identity. Jake Rodriguez oversaw the awakening of more colony ships, each one bringing new hope to a galaxy that had learned hard lessons about the dangers of both isolation and forced unity. The restored Void Hunters worked alongside normal humans and aliens, their enhanced abilities now used for construction rather than destruction. Lisa Park. Her body stabilized with medical technology that preserved her enhancements while restoring her humanity, became the leader of the Restoration Corps. She spent her remaining years working to undo the damage the collective had caused, driven by memories of who she had been before fear and isolation had changed her into a monster. The galaxy was forever changed by humanity's return. The sleeping colonists woke to find that their species had proven something important, that true strength came not from uniformity or individual isolation, but from choosing to work together while remaining uniquely human. Elena stood on the observation deck of a joint human-alien research station, watching ships from dozens of species work together to explore new worlds. The universe was vast and full of dangers, but it was also full of possibilities. Humanity had faced its darkest reflection and chosen redemption over revenge, cooperation over conquest. The stars no longer seemed cold and hostile. They were filled with the light of civilizations learning to understand each other, guided by the knowledge that diversity and choice were not weaknesses to be eliminated, but strengths to be celebrated.